All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Bitcoin and Markets. Ansel Linder here. I've been talking recently again about this perennial FUD that comes up in Bitcoin from time to time, and that is the quantum risk, quantum computing risk. Can future quantum computers, or how far are we away from quantum computers being able to hack Bitcoin or crack the crypto that is in Bitcoin? This has been a FUD item for many years, and it comes up time from time to time. My position is I am very skeptical of practical quantum computers. I'm skeptical of the theories overall behind quantum mechanics and quantum computers. I don't know if we are barking up the wrong tree or the right tree yet. Nobody really does. There is a lot of confusion over what's the right type of qubit architecture, even uh, to scale things. Nobody even knows. So that's where we still are after decades of pursuing this idea of quantum computers. And just recently, of course, with Nick Carter and others, it has been brought back up to the forefront. So anyway, NVK has wrote this piece, and I wanted to go over this with you guys right now. He says, I spent 200 hours reading quantum computing papers, so you don't have to. Bitcoin is fine. Well, mostly fine. The truth is more interesting than the panic and more urgent than the dismissals. TLDR for skimmers, Bitcoin does not use encryption. It uses digital signatures. Most articles get this wrong, and the difference matters. Quantum computers cannot crack Bitcoin in 9 minutes. That headline describes a theoretical circuit on a machine that doesn't exist and won't for at least a decade. And yeah, I've said my critique that I put out a couple weeks ago on this recent paper is the difference between logical qubits and physical qubits. So, physical qubits are the actual one unit qubit. A logical qubit is a statistical, functional, error corrected qubit because it's made up of thousands of other qubits, physical qubits. So it's just a statistical invention that it's an error corrected qubit. And out of these error corrected qubits, how much do we need? Well, we need like thousands, hundreds of thousands of these logical qubits that are just like theoretical statistical variations of physical qubits. So it's one extrapolation upon another. There was no actual physical progress made in creating a better qubit. What they did was mathematically they said, okay, we can't error correct an individual qubit. What we can do is we can just add thousands of these qubits, which we can't do physically yet, and mathematically we will statistically take the error out. Do you understand how crazy that is? That's what they're doing. But let's continue here with this. Quantum mining is physically impossible. It would require more energy than the sun produces. Seriously. Bitcoin can upgrade. It has before, SegWit and Taproot. And work has started, BIP 360. But the community needs to move faster. The real reason to upgrade isn't quantum. It's that classical math has broken countless cryptographic systems, and the SecP 250K1 could be next. Quantum computers have broken zero. So this is a good point. I also think that we need to put into context that the quantum fear is also an attack vector. You know, we rushing to upgrade, making it a urgent upgrade is an attack vector in a way. And if nothing else, it allows in more possibility for mistakes. And so very, very important whenever we talk about this stuff is to figure out if it's a real problem in the first place. It needs to spend 99% of the time deciding if it's a real problem, then 1% of the time having a trivial fix. Because a lot of these, I mean, we know a lot of the new math, a lot of the new cryptography that is more robust. A lot of that problem is already solved. It would just be a matter of doing the upgrade, which is hard. It's hard to do an upgrade in Bitcoin, but at least 99% of that time needs to be spent on really understanding the problem. All right. And then finally, he has there is a real concern. 2.26 million BTC have exposed public keys. This isn't a thing to panic about, it's a thing to prepare for. The through line. Here's the one sentence version of everything I'm about to tell you. The quantum threat to Bitcoin is real but distant. Okay, is real. That's not 100% certain. That's not 100% certain. To say real means you have 100% certainty. And from what I've seen, and if I'm wrong about this, I welcome people to point out where I'm wrong. But saying it is real is 100% certain, and there is not 100% certainty that this is a real threat. The media coverage is systematically unhinged. I agree with that. And the most dangerous thing isn't quantum computers, it's complacency disguised as either panic or dismissal. Okay, I agree with that. I would even not even just panic, it can be urgency. Urgency is a threat as well. Dismissal, again, I I don't know what he's calling dismissal, but I would say, prove to without prove to 100% certainty, or at least a 99.9% certainty that this is a real risk. I don't think we have done that. And so I'm not dismissing it. Nobody, I don't think, is outright dismissing it. Maybe there are people out there that are outright dismissing it. I could be wrong, but you need to have a significant amount of evidence. Like in the court of law, there's different levels of evidence. We're talking beyond a reasonable doubt. We're talking way above beyond reasonable doubt is what we need to prove this to, because this other side is actually extremely problematic. All right, let's continue. Both the Bitcoin is doomed crowd and the nothing to see here crowd are wrong in ways that are equally unhelpful. So I think I don't think he would consider me in agreeing with him, but I am agreeing with him that these are both 100% certainty claims. Bitcoin is doomed and nothing to see here. I'm not in that camp, but I am in the 99% towards nothing to see here. You have to prove it. You have to prove it. The truth requires holding two ideas simultaneously. There is no imminent quantum threat to Bitcoin, yes, and the threat may be much further away than the headlines suggest. And two, the Bitcoin community should be preparing anyway, because upgrade process itself takes years. Yes, I totally agree with that. Bitcoin is something where it aligns incentives. I am not a hardcore cryptographer. I wouldn't have been one of the guys on the cryptography mailing list like that, but I would have been on an economics mailing list. So we have there's a bunch of different types of people out there. The types of people that are going to be interested in this are going to be interested in this. Yes, if you could say, hey, we need to bring this up more often, maybe at the big Bitcoin conferences, you could have a room dedicated to this type of really hardcore cryptography stuff, and that is appropriate, and we should constantly keep that on the radar. But for the vast majority of people, and if you're talking addressable market for Bitcoin, 8 billion people, there might be 1,000 people that are the targets of this type of stuff. It's not the Bitcoin community, it's the Bitcoin cryptography community that should be preparing anyway. So, all right, let's continue. That's not a reason to panic, it's a reason to start. Let me show you the math. All right, part one, the media machine, or why headlines are the real threat. Every few months, the same cycle repeats. A quantum computing lab publishes a careful, heavily caveated paper. Tech media writes, quantum computers could crack Bitcoin in 9 minutes. Of course, that gets the clicks. Crypto Twitter compresses it to Bitcoin is dead. Your uncle texts you asking if you should sell, and the actual paper says nothing of the sort. In March 2026, Google's quantum AI team published a paper showing that breaking Bitcoin's ecliptic curve cryptography would require fewer than 500,000 physical qubits. Physical qubits here. A 20x improvement over prior estimates. This is genuinely important research. Google was so serious about responsible disclosure that they withheld the actual attack circuits and published only zero knowledge proofs. What the paper did not say that Bitcoin can be cracked today, that a timeline exists, or that anyone should panic. What the headline said, Bitcoin cracked in 9 minutes. CoinMarketCap ran an article titled, Will AI Accelerated Quantum Computing Break Bitcoin in 2026? The article then spent its entire body explaining why the answer is almost certainly no. This is the standard pattern. Sensational headline for clicks, cautious body for accuracy. But 59% of shared links are never clicked. So the headline is the message for most people. Raoul Paul had the best economic debunk. Markets price risk extremely fast. You wouldn't steal something that collapses in value the moment you take it. If quantum computing were about to break everything, Google itself, which uses the same cryptography, would show panic in its stock price. Google is doing fine. Yeah, I agree. I usually don't agree much with Raoul Paul, but this is pretty simple economics, and yes, I totally agree with that. We would see it's the same thing with the oil market and other macro stuff that I talk about. Uh, the price is it's not a totally efficient market. I'm not going to sit here and say that this is a totally efficient market, but the price is more true than your theory. Okay, let's speed through this part. This what quantum computers actually threaten. He talks about the difference between encryption and digital signatures. There's nothing to decrypt in Bitcoin, so it's a little bit of a false frame that is in the headlines. Talking about SHA-256, when we talk about Bitcoin mining and quantum computers, it still requires a vast amount of energy. Roughly 3% of the sun's total energy output to mine Bitcoin, which we are not even close to doing in any foreseeable future. He talks more about some specifics. Then he gets into claims that we will hear and why they're wrong. And I wanted to go through some of these down here from people. So, claim number four, we'll pick up on. Claim number four, we only have 3 to 5 years. Probably wrong, but not safely wrong. Expert estimates span a huge range. Adam Back says 20 to 40 years. Jensen Huang, NVIDIA CEO, 15 to 30 years for useful quantum computers. Scott Aronson, University of Texas, Austin, leading quantum complexity theorist, refuses to give a timeline. Notes breaking RSA would require someone investing 100 billion. So it's more of an investment problem. Craig Gidney, Google Quantum AI, 10% chance by 2030. Expert survey 26 quantum security researchers say 28 to 49% chance within 10 years. ARK Invest, long term, not imminent. Goes through a few other things here. Okay, let's read through this one. Part four, the honest part, what I do worry about. A debunking article that dismisses everything loses credibility. Here are 5 things that keep me up at night. Qubit estimates have been collapsing, though the trend may be slowing. In 2012, breaking cryptography required an estimated 1 billion qubits. By 2019, that was down to 20 million. By 2025, under 1 million. In early 2026, Oratomic claimed feasibility with as few as 10,000 physical qubits using neutral atom architecture. Now, I'm glad that he put this in here, neutral atom architecture. This is one of the possible architectures for scaling qubits or to use in the actual physical qubits. Again, like I'll say, there is no consensus over what type of qubit is even correct. All right. So these are just mathematical feasibility studies, theoretical things about one particular architecture. Though it's worth noting that all 9 authors of the Oratomic shareholders and their estimate assumes 101 physical to logic qubit ratio. That's the one thing I pointed out earlier. A logical qubit is like this theoretical error corrected bundle of physical qubits. And so they say, oh, you have to bundle 101 of these physical qubits to make one logical qubit. But that has never been validated. The historical ratio is closer to 10,000 to 1. And it might be more than that. I mean, this is all theoretical, right? The most that anybody has put on a single chip, supposedly, is 1,000 qubits, and they don't have a functional logical qubit, not even a single one. There's no fully functional logical qubit in existence. And so this is all just theoretical, hypothetical uh, talk about 10,000 to 1. It's also worth noting that on neutral atom hardware, the same computation that takes 9 minutes on Google's superconducting architecture would take 10 to 264 days. These are fundamentally different machines with fundamentally different speed profiles. And Gidney himself says that algorithmic optimization curve may be plateauing. Still, nobody knows when the qubits needed and qubits available lines cross. The honest answer is genuine uncertainty. The exposed surface is growing, not shrinking. Taproot, so this is interesting. Taproot, Bitcoin's newest and most promoted address format, exposes tweaked public keys on chain, giving quantum attackers an indefinite offline window. Bitcoin's most recent upgrade made things worse for quantum resistance. That's an irony worth sitting with. Okay, let's move on. Why it might take much longer or never happen at all. Serious physicists and mathematicians, not cranks, argue that fault tolerant quantum computing at cryptographic scale faces barriers that may be fundamental, not merely engineering. And I want to point out here just the fact that there are several major physicists and mathematicians that say that this could possibly never happen, that means that they are not convinced by the evidence. And so I'm not an expert, but I'm able to read other experts and say, look, this is not even close to 99% certain. This isn't even close to 50% certain, in my opinion, because they haven't brought these guys around. If these guys could be brought around, that's maybe crossing that 50% certainty. But these guys are saying, some of them very coherently are saying that this isn't even possible at all. Let's dive in. Leonid Levin, Boston University co-inventor of NP completeness, quote, quantum amplitudes need accuracy to multiple hundredths decimals, but we have never seen a physical law valid to over a dozen decimals. If nature doesn't allow precision beyond 12 decimal places, the entire quantum computing enterprise hits a physics wall. That's a fundamental critique based off of the precision possible in nature to orders of magnitude, many orders of magnitude here. Michael Diakonov, University of Montpellier, theoretical physicist, a 1,000 qubit system requires controlling approximately 10 to the 300 continuous parameters simultaneously, more than the number of subatomic particles in the universe. His assessment, no, never. Okay, let's see someone compete with this critique. Gil Kalai, Hebrew University mathematician, argues that quantum noise exhibits irreducible correlations that worsen with system complexity, making error correction fundamentally impossible at scale. His conjectures are unproven after 20 years, but his experimental predictions have been partially wrong, which cuts both ways. This is one of my kind of layman pushbacks is, the idea of error correction in quantum. So the quantum milieu is all around us, and what they want to do is take away quantum randomness from a part that is within the quantum milieu. And is that even possible? Like from a logical, philosophical perspective, is this even possible? That's one of my biggest things that doesn't sit right with me is can we create a space where quantum errors don't exist? I don't know if that's possible. Tim Palmer, Oxford physicist, his rational quantum mechanics framework predicts a hard entanglement ceiling at roughly 1,000 qubits, well below cryptographic relevance. These aren't fringe positions, and the scoreboard favors them. The evidence to date strongly suggests that cryptographically relevant quantum computing is either vastly more difficult in practice than the theorists predict, or entirely impossible due to some detail of the physical world we don't understand. The autonomous driving analogy is apt. It works in demos. It attracts billions in investment, and it has been 5 years away for over a decade. I mean, it's even worse than the autonomous driving. Way worse. I mean, how many variables does autonomous driving have to balance? And this guy's saying 10 to the 300 continuous parameters simultaneously. Autonomous driving is nowhere near this. It might be 10 to the 5. I don't know, but it's nothing near the problem with quantum. Okay. The default assumption in most media coverage that quantum computers will break cryptography and is just a matter of when is not the conclusion that evidence supports. Boom. Boom. I'm so glad that NVK wrote this. Is not the conclusion the evidence supports. It's the conclusion the hype cycle assumes. Yes, and it's also scientific progressivism. I think this, just like in political progressivism, I think there's this, yes, we have this kind of recency bias over the last 100 years. We have continued to push the boundaries, but there is nothing to say. I mean, we still don't understand consciousness. We still don't know if we're barking up the right tree. There's diminishing returns on all these things. They even brought this up in quantum, in even in the math, there's diminishing returns. A lot of theoretical physics is just math. And any you can create a dimension just by changing the variables to an infinite degree. So this stuff has gotten to the point where we probably need a paradigm shift, and it's not a progressive thing. So this is kind of a it's a conclusion. I wouldn't say hype. I would say a progressive ideology of science that assumes this, that it will break cryptography. It doesn't necessarily need to. Okay, let's go to part five real quick. The actual reason to upgrade, it's not quantum. He has cryptographic systems broken by quantum computers to date, zero, but cryptographic systems broken by classical mathematics to date, too many to count. So basically pointing out that the old school way of these classical mathematics is probably a bigger threat than quantum. Part six. So, what should you actually do? If you're a Bitcoin holder, do not panic. The threat is real. Again, he's using this real term. I don't know. He just said that the people that say it's not real are have the evidence on their side, and now he's saying the threat is real. Stop reusing addresses, of course. Watch BIP 360. This is always good, especially for people, even laymen like myself in the cryptography sphere, and you want to kind of understand what you're investing in, right? And dip your toe in deeper. I always say you want to invest at your level of understanding. And so if you have a 5% understanding, then you put 5% of your portfolio in it. You're never going to get to 100% understanding of Bitcoin. So your portfolio should probably never be 100% in Bitcoin. So invest in your knowledge level, and watching these things, kind of trying to understand what's going on with the development process, is just going to make your understanding deeper and enable you to get more heavily invested in a proper way. I think in an asymmetric knowledge way. You want to invest where you have asymmetric knowledge. And if you're diving into BIP 360, I guarantee you have asymmetric knowledge over this. So if you're holding long term, consider keeping funds and addresses you'll never spend from. Your public key stays hidden. Ignore the headlines. Read the actual papers. They're more interesting and less scary than the coverage suggests. Yeah, I agree with that. But I mean, this is not many people are going to be doing this, but for those that are reading this article, they probably will. So, yeah, this is good advice. So, anyway, this was a good post here by NVK. Recommend you guys, if you're not following him, you should be. It's very simple, NVK on Twitter. All right, that's it for this one, guys. Thanks. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.